All right. Monday, September 23rd afternoon, Eric Arnold here in the Politics Barn, here in the swingiest of all swing states, Pennsylvania. Where are we at? What's the status of the race? Little cleanup before we discuss where we're at here with the polls and whether or not we're going to have a Trump victory or a Harris victory. Previous episode, I discussed the assassination attempt. I was angry. I'm still angry. You should be angry too about the thing. I did not know at the time that the assassin who posted up here on Summit Boulevard facing north, waiting for Donald Trump to come into his range so he could shoot him, I made the assumption that, well, the guy couldn't be there long. For one thing, I figured he would probably park his car here on Summit Boulevard, and it would be obvious that, hey, you're not supposed to park there, and he could only be there for a few minutes before he was discovered. Well, I guess he parked it somewhere else, somewhere where it wasn't as readily obvious that he's up to no good. And apparently, according to the police statement, I guess they did this through cell phone records. Cell phones, I guess, pinging a cell phone, and that kind of pinpoints where you're at. That this guy was there like at 1 a.m. on the Sunday that he tried to assassinate the president. To refresh our recollection, it was around early afternoon, 1 or 2 p.m. On that Sunday when Donald Trump came driving up here towards the 5th green at Trump International Golf Course, where this guy was sitting waiting to get a shot at him. But before that could happen, the Secret Service spotted him and fired on him, chasing him away. So, what? This guy was sitting in the weeds here for 12 hours? 12 hours? And no one noticed him there? How's that a Secret Service success story? How is that possible? How are they not sweeping the perimeter of the golf course, which is abutting directly to public areas where anybody could just walk up, anybody, including Ryan, I'm an assassin, Routh, who is sitting there. How does he sit there for 12 hours and no one notices him, that the Secret Service don't notice him until, I guess, the guys that ride a hole ahead of Donald Trump somehow spot him. That's right there kind of miraculous that they were able to spot the barrel up against the dark bushes there and fire on the guy and chase him away. So certainly this is not a success for the Secret Service at all. It's another giant failure. And then you got a question, how is it the guy's sitting there for 12 hours? I mean, I could construe a scenario where, yes, this is just random wacko who just, knowing the schedule of Donald Trump, i.e. the public schedule, what we all know, just sees that, okay, I know he's in Mar-a-Lago, he's got nothing on the schedule, I'm just going to take my shot and just gamble that this dude is going to play golf sometime on Sunday. So I'm just going to get there way ahead of time. Now you got to think, the guy is risking exposure. This is his one chance. So he goes into the weeds there. If the Secret Service does what I would think would be an obvious task, an obvious an obvious thing for them to do, to sweep the perimeter of this golf course where he plays all the time, Yeah, I just think that would be so obvious. It's like, well, we go around and we just make sure nobody's hiding out there, up to no good. Well, then he'd be exposed, to be caught. That'd be the end. It's like, well, sir, is that a AK-47? No, this is an ice cream cone. I have an ice cream cone I take with me because in case I get hungry. Yeah, but the guy's caught. He blew his chance at that point. So he's risking that. Mr. I have no connections. I'm taking just a random chance here. I don't know. I mean, that just doesn't feel right to me. That it would feel like you're sitting in the bushes for 12. What if the freaking local cops had come by and spotted him there? Then it just doesn't feel right. Now, the second thing is, perhaps he was sitting in the bushes knowing that there would be no perimeter check. Maybe he was told there would be no perimeter check. Who would he be told by? Why, the Secret Service. Somebody in there is leaking information, or a mole, or, actively engaged in a plot to kill the president. How about that? That's somebody set that guy in the weeds there and assured him that he was going to get his shot. Now, why did they shoot him then if they're in on it? Well, they're not all in on it. There's probably one guy, and it might be somebody in the management or somebody like that. In other words, well, who told him not to do a perimeter sweep? Well, the guy in charge, probably. They probably just said, well, look, we don't have the resources to do that. Let's just make sure we're doing the really important stuff. But things like the perimeter sweeps, no one knows he's playing golf. It's an off-the-record thing, which apparently on an off-the-record thing, they don't do a hell of a lot. So if an off-the-record thing suddenly for Ryan Routh here becomes an on-the-record thing, well, then he has a lot easier chance at the guy. No, that definitely sounds to me like, why is he in the weeds there for 12 hours without some inside information? More information on the assassination today. The Justice Department released this guy's letter to us, to the world, and the Justice Department decided we should see it. Now, normally I'm all for transparency as part of my free speech fetish. I love free speech and I want more free speech. Censorship is evil. Free speech is good. So why am I upset that they released this guy's manifesto? Well, it sure seems like that's the only thing they've released. I mean, they haven't released anything as far as previous assassin asshole Thomas Crooks. We don't know anything about that guy. They've held everything on him, embargoed everything, but just selectively, they seem to release one piece of paper which says, hey, yeah, this was an assassination attempt. I guess if you're reading this, I failed. Oh yeah, I'm going to pay money if somebody else finishes the job. It's like, you guys held the trans assassin, I forget if it was a woman trying to be a man or a man trying to be a woman. I lose track. But whoever the twisted person was that massacred the Christian children in Tennessee at the Christian school, they held they never have released it as far as I know. It's made its way into the public eye because it's been leaked by enough police officers that say, hey, this should be out there. Here, I'm leaking this to the media. But they never did officially release it because it was dangerous. Dangerous how? Well, it would make you think that trans people are all crazy assassins, that they're all twisted, fucked up idiots. So they had to hide that. Well, here, this gets leaked. This is nothing more than the Justice Department basically waving a red flag like a matador at every nut job leftist, nut job Democrat who wants to kill the president. They're basically saying, hey, money. There's money involved here. You know, not his money, of course, whatever pittance of a bounty that he put on Trump. There's money, though. In other words, you can be a hero and you'll get taken care of. Don't worry. If you were able to survive somehow, you're going to get taken care of. And I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true. I think I read that the Iranian government has a price on Trump's head of tens of millions of dollars. This is, to me, the intentional posting of this guy's manifesto by the Justice Department. This is just them officially putting the Harris administration stamp on another assassination attempt. That's all it is. It's just saying, we're officially notifying you that you will be taken care of if you're able to execute and pull off this plot. Don't worry about it. You know, what would they do to him? I mean, if they're not going to, the guy will be a hero to half the country. So they're not going to kill him. They're not going to put him to death in some kind of trial. Really, if they would put the guy on trial, say, in the District of Columbia, he'd be acquitted. There'd be no question in my mind of that. If the guy stood there in front of God and everybody and shot Donald Trump, they put him on trial for murder in the District of Columbia, he would be acquitted. You doubt that? You doubt that? There's no question that 7 of those Democrats would sit there, well, 7. It might be a hung jury. I mean, there might be 3 or 4 of them that would just say, he did it. How can we say he didn't do it? It's like, well, you can't convict him, then he'll go to jail. He's our hero. You know, there's way too many Democrats that are just falling into they're just falling for evil. I mean, like we're into political assassinations now to win an election. And you guys have gotten so desperate, you've convinced yourself so much that you're on the side of truth and justice and well, all those other things, that you'll stop at nothing. And you haven't been able to look yourselves in the mirror to see what you've become. It's ridiculous. I fear there will be another assassination attempt before this is all over. The releasing of the manifesto kind of makes me think, yeah, they probably are going to try again. They probably are. We're running out of time. You know, Trump, you know, what is it, 47 days? So, you know, we're praying to God that somehow this guy's protected and is able to make it through the election without being murdered. But there are way too many normal Democrats, if you will, that have just decided that this is all fine, that this is just part of the game. And it's not part of the game. It's never been part of the game. This country is really going down an ugly, awful path right now. And voting for Harris just means you want more of the same forever, basically. All right, so that's that. Now, where are we in this race? For the past week or so, I've been pretty, I don't know if discouraged is the right word, but it would seem like every time there'd be a positive data point for Trump, I'd see a negative data point for Trump. And I'd go, oh, geez, how is this possible? We're going to lose? Come on. It's kind of like when the wind changes directions, a weather vane. You don't know what a weather vane is? It's something that would sit on top of a barn, and it would spin depending on which way the wind's blowing. So it'll just kind of give you conflicting information. One minute it'll spin this way, then it'll spin that way, then it might just sit still for a while. Then it might spin in a circle, and you don't know which way is the wind blowing. You know, you don't need to be a weatherman to know which way the wind's blowing, right? Who do you think Bob Dylan's voting for in this cycle? That's a joke. Of course, he's a Harris voter. But eventually, you know, the wind will then settle down and start blowing in one direction, then you know, as if you didn't already. But that's, I think, where we were last week. Coming out of the convention, Harris had momentum, but then I think that dissipated pretty quickly. Then the debate, that really stirred things up because the Democrats were doing somersaults in excitement on how well she did, but the American population, I think, looked at it and went, we're not that impressed. So that kind of stirred things up. Now I think things have settled down, and I think there is a firm win behind Trump. The good news. And why do I say that? Well, for a couple reasons. Today, this morning, the New York Times, which I have begrudgingly decided is a pollster that we can kind of sort of look at and go, oh, all right. It leans left, obviously, you know, by the name, but it's not garbage like CNN polls. They came out with 3 battleground state polls this morning. Trump up 5 in Arizona, Trump up 4 in Georgia, Trump up 2 in North Carolina. And then last week they came out with one that said Trump was behind by 4 in Pennsylvania. Now, a couple things. North Carolina is apparently going to be close. Trump won by a whisker in 2020, and I don't think he's gaining this cycle. For one reason, apparently the Republicans are running a complete idiot for governor who is now in all kind of trouble, if you will, where he's made, I guess, some past statements on a porn site, which to me, the guy just needs to own it. You know, he's, I think, made the break at some point saying, and that was the old me, and then the new me, and I've told you there's a difference between new me and old me. New me is saved by Jesus Christ, and I have found the Lord. And just own it, for God's sake. It's like, yep, you know, hey, I'm trying to get laid. I'm trying to get busy. I'm trying to get my freak on, you know. Hey, I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't lie. I'm just saying some things to get my name out there in the freak world. I'm just trying to get busy. You know, that might be the best. Just be honest, for God's sakes. But the fear is that this guy is going to drag Trump down with him, even though the two have nothing to do with each other. You know, none at all. There's no link between the two guys, except that they're both on the Republican ticket. So the hope is that, you know, that guy will sink all by himself and not have any kind of splash back, blowback, whatever, onto Trump. But if we lose North Carolina, that's going to make it a lot harder to win the election. So that's a little concerning. But then here, New York Times has Trump up 2 in North Carolina. And don't take the Times right there at face value. They do lean left. They have historically leaned left, despite, you know, Nate Silver telling you that they are the gold standard. Well, why does the gold standard always overestimate the support of the Democrat by 3-4 points? How can that be the gold standard where they're always off by 3-4 points in favor of the Democrat? So maybe he thinks it's the gold standard simply because they're consistent, at least. I don't know. But even if that's the case, then Trump's way ahead in these 3 states. Now, what about Pennsylvania? You're saying, well, that he's losing according to the gold standard. And I've told you again and again and again and again that whoever wins Pennsylvania is going to win the whole shebang. That if Harris is able to hold the blue wall, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, she's able to hold that, she'll probably win by that much, probably. I could give you some scenarios where it could actually be a tie. I do not believe that Trump is losing by 4 points here in Pennsylvania. To refresh your memory, and I know we got a blind spot there with the lights, so I'm just going to stand here for a moment just so you can take a look at that a little more clearly. But in 2020, Trump lost by 1.2% here in PA. Around 82,000 votes he lost by. So the idea that he's running worse, and I would say significantly worse in this cycle here in PA, no, that's just, it isn't happening. Trust me on that. I'm here, I'm on the ground, and it's just not happening. He is, I would say he's winning here in PA. That, for a number of reasons. Just your general, me looking around the neighborhood factor, that I'm seeing people who had Biden signs up in 2020 don't have Biden signs up now. You know, one or two of them do, but I know one for a fact had this giant Biden bed sheet. This year he had a Kennedy bed sheet. And then he took it down, of course, when Kennedy came over to Trump. Now, in fairness, he hasn't put up a Trump bed sheet. He just has nothing up there now. So I'm kind of hoping, well, maybe that guy's just not going to vote, or he's maybe shamed into voting for Trump. My guess is he maybe just isn't going to vote. There's a fellow down the street here. He had his Biden sign up loud and proud all last cycle. No, nothing yet. So I take that as a sign of no enthusiasm. No enthusiasm equates to low turnout for the Democrats. High enthusiasm for the Trump people. There are Trump signs all over here, all over the place. John Fetterman has been running around talking to the media, and he is essentially saying the exact same thing I'm telling you, that I believe Fetterman's terminology was the Trump sign is the new state flower, which isn't a bad turn of a phrase, frankly, Senator. Another thing about Fetterman I'm noticing is that he is not wrapping his arms around Kamala Harris in a warm hug and a big embrace and a big wet sloppy kiss. You know, when he speaks, it's almost like he's a dispassionate pundit observing the race, and he's just saying, hey, yes, this is what I see here in Pennsylvania as a Pennsylvanian. Well, that's your team, buddy. Aren't you supposed to be cheering for your team? And he's really, if he's doing it, it's doing it in a really oblique, backhanded way. So I'm kind of taking that to mean he kind of feels like there's a lot of people that are going to be voting for Donald Trump, and he isn't ready to antagonize them. Shapiro, he's been a little more anti-Trump, pro-Harris. Shapiro's the governor. I think Fetterman has decided, well, all right, if you want to be the pro-Harris person, maybe I'll just be the one that kind of plays neutral. So to distinguish me a little bit from you, there's a rivalry between these two guys to be the most powerful Democrat in the state. One's a governor, one's a senator. And they've always apparently had a rivalry here in Pennsylvania. I think both of them want to be president. You can't both be president. One of them is going to emerge as the guy that could be president. Now, everybody thinks it's going to be Shapiro. I think Fetterman's thinking, nah, it could be me. It could be me. So I think he's positioning himself intentionally to the right of Shapiro, trying to put himself in the middle here, where I can get Trump voters and I can get some Harris voters. Whereas that guy, he's only going to get Harris voters. Shapiro's not going to get Trump voters. But I guess that's a long way of saying I think Fetterman also sees that Trump is a hell of a lot stronger than -4 here in PA. The poll itself, I looked at it, it was a mess. They way oversampled Democrats, particularly from Philadelphia, where they're all Democrats. Now, they did have some gobbledygook at the end of the page about weighting. You know, in other words, okay, I know we picked 9 Democrats and only 1 Republican, and we know that's not right. So to fix it, we weighted the responses, and I think you start getting into that, you're having a mess. Especially when the ones doing the weighting are communists like people at the New York Times. They're going to screw it up because they have no idea what the normal person on the ground thinks because they're all communists. They have no idea what somebody in Fulton County, Pennsylvania thinks. So that's where I'm thinking this poll is not -4. Trump is a hell of a lot closer, if not winning, here in Pennsylvania. Another factor is registrations. In other words, there's this giant set of voters here in Pennsylvania. You know, these are all the people that are registered to vote. And I think in the 20 cycle, there were, and I'm doing by memory here now, so I could be wrong, but it was maybe, 800,000 more Democrats and Republicans. That gap has narrowed significantly since 2020. It's now down to maybe 400,000. Now, some of that is nothing to be excited about. In other words, all that is just Democrats in Western Pennsylvania that have always been Democrats, but the Democrat Party left them, much like Ronald Reagan. In other words, that's that union coal miner, that union steel worker whose factory or coal mine was closed by Democrat policies 20 years ago, and the union packed up shop and left town and left him standing there going, now that guy votes Republican, even though he's still registered as a Democrat. They're all over the state of Pennsylvania. They're all over southwestern Pennsylvania. They're all over northeastern Pennsylvania, up in Scranton and Wilkes-Barre. Democrats that vote Republican. So a lot of the switches between parties is simply these guys that vote Republican just making it official and changing their party registration to Republican. Now, that is not indicative of anything other than now it's a little more official. That guy's still going to vote Republican. It doesn't, the change in the registration numbers isn't important. But when you take those guys out, in other words, the I'm switching parties guys, which I think is meaningless. When you take that out, there's still another 250,000. That was my calculation. It could be wrong, but I think it's pretty close. 250,000 new Republican voters here in the state of Pennsylvania, whether that be somebody registering for the first time, somebody just turned 18. Remember, he only lost by 82,000 votes here last cycle. Only 82,000. Now there's another 250,000 Republican votes out there. So I'm thinking it's pretty likely that Trump is winning here in Pennsylvania. Harris continues to do more interviews, that she's putting herself out there more and more, and that's not what she wants to do. She's still, sticking her toe into it very carefully. I'll go on Oprah and they'll blow me and tongue bath me and tell me how great I am. And even when she goes on venues like that, she's terrible. So she's calling for another debate. because she lost the first debate. That's why. Oh, I know, rhetorically and according to the media, she was pitch perfect. Then why didn't her poll numbers change? The population looked at it and went, we're not impressed. We're not impressed. So she knows it. That's why she's putting herself out there more and more. She knows she's losing. So, the more you see her doing interviews and whatnot, she knows the basement campaign's not working. This tells me it's not working. There's they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. I'm going to go into this for my dear departed uncle, Arnold. He taught history at Twin Valley High School for 30 years. And I'm going to tell this story because he would hate this, because he was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. And sadly, yes, he would be voting for Harris, even though she's an out-and-out communist. But, he would just simply be too down with the Trump hatred. He hated, he before he lost his marbles, Trump had come onto the scene, and he hated him, of course, because the media told him to hate him. So, he did pretty much what he was told as far as being a good Democrat. But his favorite president was Harry S. Truman. Harry S. Truman. He came to power right after FDR died. FDR died. Truman was his vice president. Truman famously was the one who made the decision to drop the atomic bombs on Japan. Then there's basically clips of him addressing the nation after this happened. And he more or less says, they started it and we finished it, which I love. That's more or less what he said. Served into his term, 1948 was the election, and he won a very tight election against Republican Thomas Dewey, and then went on to get us into the Korean War. He fired Chief General Douglas MacArthur. I believe, I forget what he said about MacArthur. It was something really good, something about, MacArthur was stupid, which wasn't unusual or a crime, but he was also insubordinate, and that's why he fired him. So anyway, the 48 election. Truman was behind the whole cycle, trailed behind in the polls. Everybody thought the guy was going to lose. They stopped polling in September, I believe. And the last poll, which would have been Gallup back in the day, showed him down 8 points. So it was like, well, it's over. He's done. Dewey believes this. Dewey believes that all he's got to do to win is just say nothing, be vanilla, be just, Mr. Everyman, and just be totally nothing. According to his Wikipedia page, he said, you know that your future is still ahead of you. You know that your future is still ahead of you. Does that sound like anybody we know? That's Dewey. The Louisville, I believe it's the Louisville Chronicle. No, that's wrong. Louisville Courier, that's it. The Louisville Courier, their editorial page said this about Dewey towards the end of the, getting near the election day. It said, quote, no presidential candidate in the future will be so inept that 4 of his major speeches can be boiled down to these historic 4 sentences. Agriculture is important. Our rivers are full of fish. You cannot have freedom without liberty. Our future lies ahead. 1948 Louisville Courier has never met Kamala Harris. I mean, these 4 famous sentences here, agriculture is important, our rivers are full of fish, you cannot have freedom without liberty, and our future lies ahead. Hell, that would dwarf whatever the hell Kamala Harris is saying right now. It's important to just be. You know, what on earth are you talking about? So Dewey tried to just say nothing, be nothing, hide from everybody, and he lost. He lost. Truman beat him. And that's what I see is kind of happening here, is that Trump's out there hustling. Trump's out there giving interviews. Trump is basically anybody that wants to interview him. You know, that's something maybe we could hook up here. You know, if I said, you know, send a message to the Trump campaign and said, you know, I've got 6 subscribers and I'd like to interview you here in my barn. I wonder if he'd do it. You know, I half think he might. You know, maybe at a minimum we could get J.D. Vance. So these dudes are out there just pounding the pavement. Anyone that wants to talk to him, they're talking to him. This guy went and got interviewed by the Black Journalists Association, where you're not going to find any more people in a room that hate Donald Trump any more than that, and he went and gave an interview to him. So this guy is really hustling. And Kamala Harris, of course, is just hiding. You know, she's just hiding. If she can find somebody that will promise not to frighten her, like Oprah Winfrey, you know, she might ask, you know, Dane to allow that interview to take place. Well, she's losing. So, and if she keeps doing this, she will lose. I'm pretty sure that's where we're going with this. So, yeah, I know everybody's like, we're going to lose. They're going to cheat so bad it won't matter. Oh, there's no way, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you know, a lot of these data points line up. You know, her asking for another debate, her doing more interviews. Why did the DOJ release the Assassin's Manifesto, waving around basically asking for more assassinations? Because they're losing, that's why. And there's one more thing that's floating around out there that I want to remind you people of because it's that important. And that's that ABC whistleblower. Now, we're not sure this is real. We're still not sure this is real, which probably means it's not. But it would win the election for Donald Trump. Hands down, no, you know, they could shoot him 16 times over and J.D. Vance would win because it's that powerful. Now, why do you say that? Well, the whistleblower, if you missed that episode, alleged that the Harris campaign, which is Harris, they're going to, if this went out, they'd say, oh, Harris didn't know, but of course she did. The Harris campaign and ABC, David Muir, Lindsey Davis, colluded to not ask certain questions of Harris, to promise that only Trump would be fact-checked during the debate and Harris could say whatever she wanted without any kind of pushback from the moderators, and that Harris got the questions ahead of time, and that allegedly the whistleblower has phone recordings. Well, did he say phone recordings or did he just say recordings? I think he said recordings, secretly recorded conversations that prove all this. None of this is going anywhere other than the whistleblower has filed an official complaint with the SEC. I know a lot of people are saying, FEC, the Election Commission? No, the Securities and Exchange Commission, because ABC is owned by Disney, which is a publicly traded corporation, which is clearly meddling and committing election interference, if this is true. The reason this is so powerful, that if this was proven to be true, let's say the whistleblower comes out and swears on the, to me what they would need is to get the person in front of Congress to really have the most effect, to get the person in front of Congress where they would testify under oath and then tell, let's say this is true, so they're telling the truth. Yes, collusion, I have proof. And the recordings are unambiguous, they're definitive, They're not, well, who's speaking there? I can't understand that word. Who did this there? Where this is an airtight deal where, yes, this happened, and here the recordings prove it. It validates Trump. What is the biggest thing that Trump has said since he came down the escalator? No, it's not, I'm going to build a wall. That's not correct. It's rigged. It's fixed. The whole game is fixed. Just like George Carlin said, there's a big club and you ain't in it. That's what Trump has been saying. The whole game has been fixed. Then he's been saying it even louder since he lost in 2020. And he and his supporters, we've been laughed at, ridiculed, shit on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anytime we bring that up, we go, hey, you guys stole the election. Liar! Anti-democracy. You people are trying to bring down democracy. You will not admit that you lost. Wasn't fixed. Well, this would show it. It would say, have I not been saying for 8-9 years that they cheat? And here's proof. Here's proof. It would validate Trump. I'm telling you, that would win the election for him. And there'd be enough of these double haters that would go, oh God, I really hate Trump. But he's got a point. I mean, they definitely cheated in that debate, and he would win. He might win anyway, but I wouldn't get your hopes up. We're almost out of time. This whistleblower is just moving way too slowly. It may have already, they may not exist. This may just be one giant troll, which is just, people do that, I guess. They just put shit out there just to put stuff out there for their own jollies. Who knows, but unless the person comes out this week, I don't think it's going to matter. It'll be too late. The Congress has shown no interest whatsoever. I think 1 or 2 senators have mentioned it, like, well, I've demanded documents from the American Broadcasting Corporation. I've subpoenaed their documents. Well, that's meaningless. It's nothing. In other words, when ABC says, nah, we're not giving you anything, what are you going to do? Enforce your subpoena? Of course they're not. Of course they're not. So I read that a couple different ways. An obvious way you could read that is the Congress doesn't want to open this can of worms because they don't want to help Trump. Probably that's the answer. It's possibly the answer is the guy doesn't exist, or he's crazy, or he doesn't hold up. So that possibly could be it. Another way you could read it is Trump has told Congress don't open this can of worms. Maybe Trump's saying, you know what, we're winning. Why take a chance? Why take a chance here that this might somehow blow back on us? If we just keep doing what we're doing, we're going to win and win easy. So that's possible. But they can't have, what they can't have is a Godfather 2 situation. Where if you don't know what The Godfather 2 is, shame on you, one of the greatest movies ever made. If you don't watch movies, Flamingo Kid, perhaps where you would start is by renting The Godfather, well, I guess The Godfather first, and then The Godfather 2. So, if you just jump right in with the second Godfather, you might be, what's going on here? I don't understand. You'd figure it out, but it makes more sense if you've seen the first Godfather. Michael is, one of his capos is Frank Pentangeli. Well, Frank Pentangeli is starting to have some friction there with Michael. Frank wants to do things one way, and Michael wants to do them a different way. And Frank is starting to get a little grumpy. Well, some of Michael's enemies, Hyman Roth in particular, starts whispering in Frank's ear that Michael is turning on Frank and is going to try to kill Frank. So Frank decides, okay, I'll turn state's evidence then. I'll become a government witness. And now he's going to testify before Congress that Michael's up to all kind of bad stuff and being the mob boss that he is. So Michael's got to put an end to this. So he shows up at the hearing where Frank's about to lay out the entire Corleone crime family. He shows up with Frank's brother, sits there with Frank's brother. Hey, here's your brother. Your brother, he's going to sit here and watch you rat me out. How do you think that's going to end? So the obvious message is that either he's getting killed or some other Pentangeles are getting killed if you open your mouth. So Frank, of course, then goes, that's bad. And then changes his mind, famously telling the committee, I don't know nothing about that. Don't know nothing about that, Senator. So that's what you can't have happen. In other words, we can't have that ABC guy come in there and go, I don't know nothing about that. So, and then have the ABC guy do the Tom Hagen. This committee owes an apology. This committee owes an apology, Senator. Yeah, we can't have that because then we'll look like idiots. So that's why this is probably being shut to the side, because this whistleblower simply doesn't have the evidence they're alleging they have, or they don't exist to begin with. Oh, it would be glorious, though, if it actually came out. It would be glorious. The good news is, I think we're probably at this moment in time winning. These are pretty solid numbers here for Trump. Even the numbers that are, quote, bad for Trump, CBS had a national poll. I think it showed Harris up 4 or 5. NBC had a national poll, showed Harris up 4 or 5. Here in Pennsylvania, the standard communist college is called Franklin and Marshall over in Lancaster. They just came out with their Pennsylvania poll showing Trump down 3. These are all way, way closer than Trump was in 2020. So even these highly left-leaning polls are showing Trump much closer than they showed him in 20. Franklin and Marshall had Trump down 12 here in Pennsylvania, I think. I'm getting mixed up. I believe that was during the 16 cycle where he beat Hillary Clinton. Then maybe they changed their methodology a little bit. I think in 20, I think they only had Trump losing by 7 or 8. So 3, it's 3 now. That's much closer than they had him in 20. So that's where even the bad news isn't that bad, where I think Trump is probably even at worst right now. I think there's some signs that he's probably winning and possibly may win significantly. That's what I'm hoping, is that Harris, the more she talks, the more unpopular she is. She's in a box. She can't do anything, really. Even a good politician would be hamstrung by where she is. In other words, you can't own your leftist principles and values because the Americans don't want to hear that. We don't like that. You can't tell people that you've changed your mind because you haven't, and you're not a good liar, where you can't make people believe it. Oh, she lies all the time. What do you mean she's not a good liar? Well, a good liar doesn't mean she's not a liar. Of course she's a liar. She's just not a good one. No one believes it. She's pro-fracking. She's pro-fracking. Are you kidding me? Everybody knows you're not pro-fracking. Everybody knows you don't want to secure the border. It's even people that don't follow this stuff, I think, grasp that fact. There goes the wife. So, no, she's definitely, I don't think she's making the sale. She's just, there's not a lot she can say to sell herself. She's stuck with the Biden-Harris record, and it's not a good one. It's not a good one. So we're crossing our fingers. We're hoping we're going to win. I don't know. I think, I don't know. I've been wrong. I've been wrong so many times in the last 30 years in these elections. I thought we were going to win in 2000 easily and barely squeaked it out. I don't even remember in 2004 if I thought we'd win or not. And then you find out, come to find out years later, it's like, and what did we win? What was the difference between George W. Bush and John Kerry? Not a hell of a lot. What was the difference between Barack Obama and John McCain? Nothing. Not a damn thing. What was the difference between Romney and Obama? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So this is one of the few elections, these last 3 Trump elections, where there's now a distinct difference between the candidates. A distinct difference. So, I thought Clinton would win in 16, she lost. I thought Trump would win in 20, he lost. So I hesitate to predict what I think is going to happen just because it'll probably change tomorrow, and I'm always wrong. So, but right now I do think Trump is winning. I think he is winning. Who knows what the October surprise is? They're not just going to allow him to win. They're going to try something. Let's see if this momentum keeps up. Let's see if it keeps up. All right, that's all I got for you. Hey, free speech. That's what this election's about. Donald Trump is for free speech. Kamala Harris and the Democrats, they want to shut you up. They don't want you to talk. That ain't right. I believe in free speech. I believe in Donald Trump. Eric Arnold signing off.